Brumby's Bakery honours the taste buds of hard-working Aussies with golden flaky pies, sausage rolls, fresh sandwiches and sweet treats. Download the Brumby's app and start earning Brumby's rewards points today. You'll even receive a free loaf when you register. Brumby's, handcrafted by local bakers.
Welcome to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
And what a pleasure it is to have your company for another edition of This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funeral, celebrating lives. And today we celebrate the sporting life of a very special footballer. You can go through his career achievements, but if we just say 5-time day, 5-time night, you know who my guest is, Dermott Brereton.
It could be Gary Ayres.
Well, no, you've got the copyright on that. Hello, mate. How are you?
Yeah, very good. Thanks, Pete.
You're looking well.
Oh, I'm going all right for an old bloke. Now, you can ask me questions about my sporting life.
Yes.
I would have thought everybody kind of knows most of what I've done, 95% of what I've done already. Every time Robbo used to grill me on crunch time and all that sort of thing. So this will be interesting to see just how good your research is.
All right, I'll see if I can get that other 5% that people don't know about.
It's not that good.
Well, I think it would be because we've known each other for a long time. Now, I want to put one stipulation on this interview.
Yeah, I can't call you Scoop.
Well, that was one of the things. Now, I don't think you've ever called me Pete before you just did then.
Just then,
in 30 years.
I had to fight back Scoop then.
Yeah, now, where did that come from?
Well, you remember our old mate Stewie Harrison? We used to live together.
I do.
And you were working at Channel
7.
Yeah. And you uncovered some story or something, and Stewie was a funny bloke. We were sitting around the TV, and he said, "Look at Pete, he's got the scoop." And we just started calling you. You weren't even in the room. You were on TV, and we just started calling you Scoop. And I can even remember after the 86 grand final, as a young hoon, you came in after the game and you asked me about the win, and I said, "Yeah, Scoop."
Yes,
and I
did.
Think you, and I look back at that and think, "Oh my God, I sound like an A-grade first class, gilt-edged, platinum-plated bogan."
The other thing I remember about that is that when I was calling you over, because, you know, the rooms are chaotic after any game of footy, but especially a grand final, I was calling you over. You were giving me the forks from across the room. You were just sticking the two fingers up in the air before you came over.
Yeah, did a bit of growing up after that.
Yeah.
Sometime after that, perhaps still not enough yet.
No, the other stipulation I was going to put on the interview was that you don't do what you used to do to me, because you did occasionally
throw stuff
go to
at
the
you or
tribunal.
goose you.
Yes, because when the tribunal used to be on the third floor at AFL House outside Ross Oakley and Jack Hamilton's office, and you were an occasional visitor there. So when we were doing our live crosses, you just found some ways to amuse yourself with the people who were on TV.
Throwing rolled up tape at the back of your head, or flicking a towel at your mid-range area.
Yes, the groinal area.
Yeah. Something what's wrong with that?
Okay, so we're not doing that today, is that okay?
There's a table between us, mate. Yeah. I will say, you know what? I went to the tribunal 17 times, I think.
Yeah, I think it was.
Yeah, 17 times. And by the end of my career, it had moved to the MCG.
Yeah.
I just didn't feel at home going to the tribunal there.
No.
Didn't have the same feeling.
No, it used to be lovely amongst the pot plants there on the third floor in Jollymont Terrace, wasn't it?
Jollymont Road.
Jollymont Road.
120 Jollymont Road, third level.
How do you know it so well?
I worked downstairs on the first floor. So what we used to do, the lift would go up to the third floor, and you'd see the second floor light up, and in between, you'd feel the lift start to slow up for the third floor, and we'd just say in the lift, "You ready?" The doors would go back and click, on come the lights, and the questions would come. "Hoping for a good hearing?" "Yes." Yeah. "Don't say anything, Dermott, you'll stuff yourself up."
We used to have some wonderful times there. I remember people going to sleep in tribunal hearings, you know, the journos who'd been there for a long time.
Yep.
Remember Gary Gazelle, who used to work at AFL House? You would remember Gary?
Yes, he was the janitor.
Yes, and would do all sorts of things and look after the media and bring us out cups of tea.
I reckon there was about 25 people who worked and ran the VFL at that at that stage.
Which is staggering when you consider that it was a big
They worked really hard.
organisation.
They worked really hard, yeah. And I used to be allowed to get off at 4 o'clock each day, as long as I could get the mail out at 4 o'clock each day to go to training, yeah.
You talked about the 5% that I've got to find out that no one knows about. Here's a question you may never have been asked. Did you love footy or were you just bloody good at it?
Loved it. And it has nothing to do with your ability at school, even though I was actually, believe it or not, an incredibly good student. If you were to rank footballers' knowledge on field in my era, I thought I could outthink 99% of the other opponents. Yeah. So I understood the game really, really well. Had to at my height, but I did love it. I watched it from a kid. I was so dirty in the early days when I was just, 10, 12 years of age that football replay lasted 30 minutes and you only get one quarter. I was so dirty on that. And then I'd watch World of Sport and watch the highlights. I went to my first game of football as well, the VFL out at Waverley Park. And, just tended to understand it a little bit better than most of the others.
Did you barrack for Hawthorn?
Collingwood. Back for Collingwood, I had a mate. Phil Carman's first year was 1975, and a mate had his father had a membership, one of the original memberships to Waverley, and he invited me and his son Pete out to Waverley. We went out that day, and Phil Carman was playing in about his third or fourth game for Collingwood, and they were playing Footscray. Footscray incidentally won. I think Carman got 2 votes, and I watched him, and I thought, this is the greatest player I've ever seen, and I backed for Collingwood, and went to a lot of footy and watched Phil Carman play. His first year was his best year, clearly, and by far, but watched the way he played, and he was quite genial at the sport, so, watched a lot of footy.
You mentioned as a kid, memories as a kid.
Yep.
Who was the first one to call you the kid? Because you carried that nickname for a long time.
Yeah, there's a few little stories that, abound. But what it was I was 16 and had been playing the practice match era with the reserves. And I was about 76, 77 kilos. And playing on the back flank, half-forward flank, predominantly on the back flank, though. And I got dropped to the under-19s for game 1. And with that, that's a great story as well. I got rung up on the morning of round 1, where I'm due to play in the under-19s. And the team manager said, you've been taken up to the seconds. And I said, oh, yeah, who's injured? He said, no one's injured. I said, well, why am I in? Who's out? And that time of year, the team manager said to me, Gary Ablett's unavailable. He's preferred to go duck shooting. And that is a true story. I got my first game of senior football in the reserves as a 16-year-old because Gary Ablett went duck shooting. So I turned up at the MCG and I sat on the bench till half-time. And there was a fella on the wing. He'd never played a senior game. Wasn't a bad player, but just didn't make it for whatever reason. His name was Trevor Smith. And Scotty Wade, who runs the Tasmanian Football League, he used to be quite chirpy, and him and Craig Hoyer were great mates. He was the ruckman in the reserves. And Des Maher was the coach, 199 games for Hawthorn.
Left footer.
Yeah, on the wing. And he said, Smithy, Trevor, come on, mate. You've got to get a touch. You've got to get involved. You've got to get the ball. You've got to put yourself in there. Otherwise, we'll put on... And he literally turned to the side of the room where there was just a seat with 2 of us, myself and the other 19th, 20th man. And he said, we'll put that kid on. He forgot the name. And Scotty Wade, when we ran out at after half-time, he said, who's that kid? And he started having a laugh about it. And that's where it came from.
So it was the kid from then on.
Yeah.
So he's done a Sam Newman then, he forgot the name.
And a Gary Ablett as well.
Yes.
They reckon Gary, he once went to a physio, the Geelong physio, and, the league physios also had their private practices, so he's gone there during the day, and there's some bloke getting a bit of treatment on his thigh. And Gary Ablett's gone, "Oh, your thigh's crook, mate." And he went, Yeah, strained it." And he said, "Yeah, I was going to miss a couple more." And Gary said, "That's crook. How'd you do that? Where do you play?" And he said, "I'm playing with you, Gary, at Geelong." And he went, "Okay, right, all right, yeah." He had no idea who his teammates were.
You know that this is going to be a rambling chat because it's probably the way we've chatted over the years. So what I'll do on the other side of the break is I'll talk to you about the start at the famous Hawthorn Football Club and also the end at the famous Hawthorn Football Club. Dermott Brereton is my special guest. Great to have him along for This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives.
You're listening to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
And the kid, Dermott Brereton, is my special guest on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives. Derm, how did that kid come to play his first game in a final and burst onto the scene?
I was actually playing pretty good footy. I was playing on the half-forward flank, being sort of my size, 6'1.5", even though I got abnormally bloody long arms and had a really good spring. And I was playing next to a guy called Nick Wilton. Good bloke. Nick, and he went down injured about 3 or 4 rounds before the end of the season. And Desmar, undersized forward line, he said, "Just move over to centre-half forward." That's literally what you did if you were sort of semi-tall enough. And I thought, I'm a bit undersized, and this is against men as a 17-year-old then. And kicked, I think, a 7. Came out the next week, and Doc, Nick Wilton, who's a radiologist, he was still out injured, so I played centre-half forward again, and I think I kicked another 6. I think I had 3 weeks of 6s and 7s. Got to the finals, and first week was against North Melbourne, and I didn't kick a 6 or 7, but I got a 5 from centre-half forward, so I'd kicked like 30 goals or thereabouts in 4 weeks. And then, for some reason, I didn't take my car to training. I caught the train into town and out to training. And Alan Jean said, "I want you to come home with me tonight, son. I'll give you a lift home." So anyway, he gave me a lift home and he said, "I'm really thinking about putting you in this week for week 2. And
that sounds like him too.
And he did. He rang me up on the Friday night after being named as a from. 5 players were allowed to be named as from for the interchange bench in those days. And I looked at the forward line and I thought, they don't have anything really besides Michael Byrne resting. It was a ruckman. They don't really have any sort of marking target in the forward line. I'll get a game here. So a little bit presumptuous. But he rang me up on the Friday night then after giving me a lift home the night before. And said, "I can fit you in tomorrow, son." And I said, "Oh, that's fantastic. I thought you might."
Yeah.
He tore strips off me. So that's how that came about. But I was in pretty good form and then played against a mixture of Ross Henshaw, who was a very, very good player, and David Dench. When Matthews went onto the ball, Dench would pick me up. When Matthews came back down, Dench would go and pick Lee up, and Henshaw would come over onto me and was able to get 5 goals in that first game. So I thought, this is easy. This is going to be pretty easy to kick 1,000 here. And next week came out and played against a bloke, once again a mixture for the first half of the game, but I actually moved up to the flank and I played against Peter McConville and Bruce Dool. And I did not have 5 possessions. And Yabby took me off, and he actually said later on, he said, "Son, I panicked a bit under real pressure in the preliminary final. I took you off a little early, didn't let you settle in." So it was the only time in my career, Jeansy, ever said I made the wrong choice. So I had another 188 games with him after that. Yeah.
How big an influence was he, obviously as a footballer, but as a person as well on you?
Oh, huge. Thing is, I've often spoken about this to people, and so I got invited to Hawthorn as a 14-year-old, playing in a thing called the Ayers squad, which became the Crimmins squad in later years, which played against the Coventry or Collier squad of the similar era from Collingwood. They used to play a game against each other. And what it was meant to be boys who were 1 year away from playing under-19s, from within the relative zones. And I was 14 when I got invited there. I was 15 when I went up to the club, played my first under-19s game. And so I was 4 years out of my own age group and played that full year under-19s. The next year was 16, because I turned 16 later that year, 16 turning 17, and the following year I played senior football at the end of the year. So that was pretty well the journey for me in terms of the time frame.
What did he say the time you pulled out? Was it the pink boots?
He didn't say anything. I pulled out the green boots first, yeah.
Yeah.
And
because they came from Adidas. And
they came from Adidas. Teddy Whitten. Trevor Barker and I came up with that plan. We used to play golf, and it was in the days of the first time they ever made fluoro golf balls. And he pulled out a golf ball, and it was a white one, and he was a left-handed golfer, Trevor. And I pulled out this fluoro green thing, and he laughed and said, "Of course you've got the fluoro one, blah, 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 blah." And we had a laugh, and then we're chatting away. I said, "Well, everyone's got fluoro stuff. Look at the bat grips on the test players' bats now. They're all fluoro pinks and whatever." And we just had a laugh. And I said, "Wouldn't it be funny if you got a pair of boots like that?" So anyway, I spoke to Teddy Whitten, and Teddy said, "Yeah, mate, we can make fluoro boots." So I used to have to go out to
Mulgrave.
Not Mulgrave.
No?
Mulgrave was the head office, but they had a boot making facility out in Ferntree Gully.
Oh, righto.
So I went out there, and I I did put my bare foot on a piece of paper, and the bootmaker traced around it with a pencil. He then brought out about half a dozen huge sheets of coloured leather, and he threw the fluoro-coloured ones to the bottom. And I said, "No, what do you want, mate? Those ones." And he's like, "Really? Really?" He was actually an Italian man. I won't dare try and do an accent like that. And he said, "Really?" So I said, "Yeah, all right, those ones." So we got fluoro green and fluoro pink. So I took a couple of weeks to make them, picked them up. Ted said, "They're fantastic, they're fantastic." All right. So I played in them. First game I played was a night game, played relatively poorly, and Jeansy said at half-time, and he looked at me, and he said, "Son, any time you want to get them dirty with a bit of leather, some other leather, you can introduce yourself to the football." And he was very, very cutting in the way he would say things like that. And then with the pink-coloured ones, they were next level. And Ted Whitten was always saying to me, "I've teed it up with Yabby. He said it's all right. I've teed it up with the Hawthorn Footy Club." He did no such thing. I knew he hadn't, because Yabby wouldn't have said, "Okay." He said, "Jeansy reckons it's all right, no problem." And Anyway, so we got to a State of Origin game, and after Ted badgering me for about a month, week in, week out, about wearing the pink Adidas boots, I pulled them out in this state game before the game, and I pulled the laces apart to put my foot in, and then I started pulling one on, and I said, "Look at this, Ted." And I've got them on, and he yelled at me, said, "You're not wearing them for Victoria." I thought, "Oh, double standards, here we go." So, no, but that was the story of those. And the funny thing was, I mean, there had been blokes like Phil Carman who'd worn white boots, and so had Sammy Newman and the likes, but to my recollection, they are the first pair of fluoro green anything shoes the sporting world's ever seen. And now, if you don't have a pair of fluoros, you're the odd man out.
Well, if you wear black boots these days,
you're a lair.
The commentators say, "Gee, you want to be able to play if he's wearing those."
Yeah, I know. I speak to my cousins and the likes, and we watch the Olympics, and they're running around in fluoro runners, fluoro green. I said, "That's a bit passé, isn't it? I was doing that 25 years ago."
Speaking of State of Origin, EJ was so passionate about it. We all know that. You played many times for Victoria.
9 times.
Did you share that love of State of Origin football that EJ had?
I did at the start. All I wanted to do was play for Victoria, apart from play league football. I wanted to play for Victoria so much so I had a crack in my ankle. I sustained it on a Saturday afternoon. We were playing on a Tuesday night against Adelaide. 1985, I'd been picked in the team and had to get to training, and all I did was strap it up. It hurt like hell at training Sunday morning, the next morning, and I just kicked on the left foot. Once it was strapped, I could function with the foot, but it hurt like hell. I had a crack through it, we worked out later. I just kicked on the left foot, and Sheedy was the coach, and he said, why are you kicking on the left foot? And I said, just a little bit sore in the ankle, it'll be fine. I'll just give him more of a break. And he went, okay. So I played that next Tuesday night with a crack in my ankle, and I would have done anything to play on that first one. By the second or third State of Origin game, Yabby had been into me saying, son, you've got all these blokes looking for Victoria, and there'll be Sheedy coaching them, and there'll be Graham Richmond, and there'll be Schwabby, and they'll all be saying, get into them, give them a clip, go through them, play hard, be nasty to them. I'm telling you, you'll get reported in one of those state games, and we won't have you here at Hawthorn. Take it easy. And he was so constant with that, I ended up losing the drive to play for Victoria. And funny enough, only at the end when I thought, gee, I've got something to prove here, by about 1991 or so, did I really want to play for Victoria again. But and it sounds bad, but there were times I pulled out with really minor injuries from playing for Victoria. So I ended up playing 9 games for Victoria. I watched a replay the other day of the game against West Australia when they came back. Buckenara kicked the late one. McNish kicked the late one after a really good screamer. And I remember watching it and watching them play in the first 3 quarters thinking, God, I was slack. And then the last quarter, just the instincts kicked in, and I think I kicked 3 or 4 in the last quarter and played pretty well because I had a go. But I just didn't have a go at state footy after the second or third game.
That might prove one of the 5% that we were talking about at the top of the show. Now, I know that you said 95% is documented. When we take a break, we can't not talk about that wonderful era and all of those grand finals in a row. So we'll do that briefly, and then we'll get back onto the other stuff.
Happy to go there.
Is that all right?
Good.
Dermott Brereton is my special guest on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives. More with the kid after the break.
You're listening to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
9-time Victorian representative, Hawthorn Team of the Century, AFL Hall of Famer Dermott Brereton is here with me. Derm, we are going to talk about that era. When they talk about the great teams, they'll talk about Hawthorn of the 80s. Did you feel as though, as a collective, that nobody could touch you? You were that good, you were that cohesive, you were that together as a team?
Yeah. If we played our best footy, we knew no one could beat us.
Yeah.
So, you talk about, we won 5 premierships over 8 years. Legitimately, we won 4 out of 6 years 2 times, being 87 and 1990. We had a chance to win 4 in a row. Win one of those years, and we'd have won 4 in a row. And with all due respect to the wonderful working ruckman we had we had someone like a Simon Madden, we might have just won 4, 5 or 6 in a row. Yeah, we had some fantastic servants who, by their own admission, Ian Payton and the likes, would say they weren't in the same class as a Simon Madden. Having said that, I think Simon was in a class of his own. But had we been able to do that and stay clear of a few injuries, like everybody has the same notion, stay clear of injuries, and we could have won even more.
If that team couldn't win 4 in a row, is it impossible to do?
No one will do it.
Yeah.
No one will do it. It's so hard to keep your bodies together for 4 years in a row, 3 years in a row. I mean, I know we've seen it in the last 20 years, 18 years, we've seen 2 teams do 3 in a row. But the only teams that do it are mature teams, like really mature teams. And if you're a mature team, you're very close to the time when your body stops running as fast, moving as adeptly. Your agility is on the wane as well. So one grand final, you go down in history as a fantastic team. 2, you're an all-time great. 3 premierships in a row, and you are etched into time immortal with the AFL.
That legendary status, though, didn't count for much towards the end of your career. You were pretty pissed off with Hawthorn at the end of your career, weren't you?
Yeah, I was. I mean, nobody likes losing their job, and there'd be people out there driving trucks and buses and standing behind counters and say, well, I lost my job last year. I was pissed off too. Sorry, am I allowed to say that?
I did, so you can.
Did, yeah. Yeah, and that's understandable. What happens in sporting clubs, especially AFL clubs, we remunerate somebody, we do it handsomely, they get paid well, no problem with that. Over and above, we expect our players to bleed for the club. And that's over and above what they want from you for footballing ability. And I thought I'd done that, and I just don't think it was, that was returned. I understand the club ran into some financial difficulties, but I also made some massive concessions in terms of renegotiating a contract. And, they didn't see it that way. They just thought, yeah, you know what, this is, trash and treasure sale. This is our trash, and out goes the window. Out through the window goes, half a dozen, 6, 7, 8 players. To this moment in time, guess what? Someone like Gary Ayres never retired. Gary Ayres, the great Gary Ayres, just got delisted. That got lost in time as well. So there were mistakes made, and that's half the reason I went back and went onto the board at Hawthorn. Thought, as good as or as bad as we will be, we just cannot allow treatment like that to happen again. And if we do have to move somebody on, we look them in the eye and we treat them with a bit of dignity.
So that time when you went on the board, did that heal the wounds that had been caused in 92?
Yeah. I mean, the guys who were there when did it, I mean, Jeff Lord was the president in at the end of 93, and he was the president, and they had to find money. They had to cut costs and the likes, and I understand they do that because the club's bigger than the individual. I just didn't think it was handled the right way. That's my opinion. I could probably lessen my opinion from that time, and Lordy would say he could probably massage it a little bit better as well. But I get on very well with Jeff. He just had the club's best interests in view, and I understand that. The club is the people who were running it at that time, but the club keeps going forever. So you get a chance later on. So I thought I'd go back and try my hand as best I could under the board of Ian Dicker.
If you wave the magic wand, would you like to be regarded as a one-club player?
That's a difficult question for me because it taught me so much about the person I have become. And, of course, you would love to be a one-club player. But going from Hawthorn to Sydney, who couldn't beat the Bananas in pyjamas, and so it taught me about the humility of losing. Going to Collingwood, which was just a wonderful experience, and so they laud their players, and I still say this to this day. We lost the first game, and I was sort of assigned to hang with Severio, and we walked into the club rooms, and it was like the Beatles walked into town when the players came into the club, and we'd lost by about 4 goals, and the team sort of took it in their stride and said, yeah, this is what it's like, league football, we're stars and whatever. And I gave a couple of them a shake, said, this is not the real world. I remember playing at Hawthorn. From the 87 grand final until it was about round 3 or 4, 1990, the club lost 6 games and won 4 premierships. 2 day, 2 night, 88 and 89. Of those 6 games, I think I came off injured in 1 and I was suspended for all the other 5. So I didn't walk off the ground from the 87 grand final to round 2 or 3 in 1990 in a losing team at AFL level. You just assumed that you were going to win every week. So to go to Sydney then just taught me a little bit about myself, and it took me a while to acclimatise to losing. I got pretty frustrated up there.
What about another moment on the footy field when you decided that you were going to run through the Essendon huddle?
Mm-hmm.
Was that when you kissed Billy Duckworth?
Yeah.
And there was a goal taken off Hawthorn, I think.
Yeah, off Piggy. He took a mark and he fell away from the umpire's view, and Billy sort of altered his step and gait to try and knee him in the head on the way down. He was pretty good at that, Bill. He's a ripping bloke, Bill, but by God, he was a mongrel out in the ground. Well, a few of us were. Anyway, so I came in to remonstrate and I started yelling at the umpire and got him offside because I told the umpire I wasn't very good at his job because he missed it, and Dunstall should get a 15-metre penalty in those days. He missed it. Billy got in close, and I thought he was going to headbutt me, so I got in closer and kissed him to show that, say, this is quite funny to me, Bill, and you might be trying to get angry, but it's making me laugh. Anyway, so we went back to the goal line. He pushed me, I pushed him, he pushed me to the side of the chest, I pushed him to the side of the head. So umpire gave a head-high free kick, and Pig missed his 100th goal, so he just took off. He's dirty on me. My best mate in the world, Chris Whitman, hung with me and argued with the umpire, and argued with him so long, by the time I decided to vacate the scene, the huddles had formed and they were just in a direct path, the Essendon huddle, from where I wanted to get to.
So there it was, and through you went.
Well, we started jogging towards it, Whitty and I, and about 15, 20 metres away, I just literally on the spur of the moment thought, well, I'm not deviating, and Whitty started to veer out. And I somehow got through to the other side and got punched about 20 times on the way through, I would estimate. Got through to the other side. Whitty starts to come veer back in and join up with me. We jogged into the group again and got met by Alan Joyce, who had actually seen it all unfold.
And his viewpoint was?
Yeah, of the incident?
Yes.
Yeah, he wasn't all that happy.
No.
He asked me, why I shouldn't be sent to the bench, banished. And I told him, because I'd just been punched in the head, 15, 20 times, and I was still really angry. I thought, if I back down here, I'm gone. I'm on the bench. He said, why shouldn't I put you on the bench? And I said, because we're 3 goals down and I'm the best forward you've got. Anyway, he then turned away to Whitty and looked at him and said, what were you doing then, Chris? So Whitty just shook his head and got through with it, and actually played pretty well in the last quarter, and we won. So, yeah.
Did the events of that day and that opponent have anything to do with another Hawthorn-Essendon game down the track? The famous game? The line in the sand game that everyone talks about?
No, I just hated Essendon. Full stop. Didn't
Do you
matter
still
when.
hate him?
It's like, let's put it into a gentleman's sport. Tennis. The best combatants are the ones you dislike the most because they bring out the best in you, and you have to dislike them to get over the top of them, but you admire them so much for what they can make you do in an effort to beat them. I'm sure that, Federer probably likes, Nadal, and they probably like each other.
Until they walk onto the court together.
Correct. And then they bring out the best shot play, they bring out the hardest edge in each other, and for that time it is it's on. So in a really nasty physical sport, that's what they tended to do to myself and blokes like Dipper. Yeah, so people are going to think, you're making it up, but they started the dirty stuff with us, and we thought, well, we can match that and give them more. So I think it's about 50-50. They got a few wins in it, and we got a few wins back on them. Yeah, but they were pretty nasty and tough. And I went through it with Robbo. I showed him the 85 grand final, and I said, I'm going to stop it, and I'm going to rewind it, and I'm going to show you little snide acts from both sides, players on both sides. Took me about an hour to get through the first quarter.
And then the famous brawl happened. And
just showed him the little things that happened in those years. Yeah. And then, transfer forward to 2004, I think, the line in the sand game. Yeah. Well, I didn't really have a great hand in it. I'm glad people think I might have to be associated with it.
Did you or did you not say Mark Johnson should not come off the ground?
Yes, I did. But I said that to 2 players, not a group. I think Patrick Smith suggested at the time that I'd address the team, which could be further from the truth. I actually went down there to listen to the coaches. Good bloke, Jono, from Essendon. And he slam tackled Robbie Campbell, who was just a puppy at that stage. Big kid, but just a puppy. And it was pretty pernicious. It was pretty nasty. Robbie had heard the whistle, didn't play the game out because of the whistle. Play the sport out to the end. So we went limp to hand the ball back, and Jono went through with a slam tackle, and Robbie didn't get up. And that incensed us. And they'd not only pantsed us for the previous 10 or so games. They'd really beaten us up. So I went downstairs pretty agitated, and then just when I was at the urinals, a couple of the Hawthorn boys walked up and I said, "Don't let that little so-and-so walk off the ground." He's one of the few who did walk off the ground, I might add. He's pretty tough, Jono.
He was, yeah.
Yeah, Mark Johnson. So, but that's as far as it went, and apparently there was this great big expose, into how I souped them up and sealed them up, which couldn't be further from the truth.
One last one I wanted to talk to you about, the famous Mark Yates incident.
Yep.
It has gone into footy folklore. It's seen as one of the most heroic acts on the football field. Did you see it that way when you recovered and kicked that goal? Did you sense at the time what it meant in the overall scheme of things, not only to Hawthorn on that day, but how that act would be regarded? Because everything that happens in grand finals are multiplied by 10.
No. I've never been asked that question before. No. In the moment, you're just playing the sport. I sensed the moment of being a grand final. The moment I sensed was, I have every right to go off the ground here. I know I've broken ribs. And I sensed that moment, but I just didn't want to let that happen. So probably earned the most praise from the coach, Alan Jeans, for that moment, of my footballing career.
Did that mean a lot to you?
Everything.
Because he wouldn't hand it out willy-nilly.
No. I still say, in my entire career under Jeansy, he said to me, "Well done, son," twice. I reckon I played a few more games than two. More than two good games. He was like the hard disciplinarian father who you loved and admired, who just couldn't hand out a compliment. So when he gave that compliment, it just meant the world to him. Yeah. So at that stage, no, I didn't think it was that. I just thought, stay on the ground, kick the goal. That's part of the gig, and keep playing as long as you can.
We're just about out of time. When we come back, you mentioned one name, Jason Dunstall, or Piggy as you called him.
Yep.
I want to find out what your relationship is with Jason Dunstall, because
ordinary.
I don't know whether you're madly in love, you two, or whether you just want to belt the living suitcase out of each other.
Ordinary bloke.
We'll find out when we come back on the other side of the break. Dermott Brereton with the final segment on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funerals, celebrating lives.
You're listening to This Is Your Sporting Life with Peter Donegan.
We need 3 hours for the show. I'm convinced about that with Dermott Brereton, our final segment with Derm. Now tell me, how's fatherhood? Are you a good dad? Are you a proud dad? What sort of dad have you been?
I'm a good dad. I've had both my kids when they turned 10 years of age. My daughter's 22 now. My son's 18. When they both turned 10 years of age, or just months literally after, they got their choice to who they want to live with. So they both come and live with me in turn. And I've still got my son now, and my daughter comes home once every blue moon and then moves out again. And so, yeah, I've been a single dad for 12 years now. Yeah, so, and love it. Love it. It's great fun. I try and lead by example, but it's not rubbing off yet.
Do you draw, Derm, on the experiences you had with your dad? Because there's been a lot of tragedy in your family.
Yeah. Well, yeah, you look at some of the mistakes, and there's no blueprint for how to bring up kids. You've got the basic principles of what you think fatherhood should be. Yeah, and we all have experienced parents, above us at some stage, and a lot of the things they hand on are fantastic to us, and then they get some wrong. So you try and find your own way about it. But I still sit back at the end of the day and look at the way I've parented and gone, probably should have done that a bit differently. Yeah.
There wouldn't be one parent who's ever existed who wouldn't have had that thought at some stage, though.
Only liars.
Yeah, exactly.
Only liars would say differently.
How's your boy with his footy aptitude? Has he got what it takes?
He's remarkably instinctive. There are things that he does as a lead-up half-forward that I can't teach league footballers. Still got to learn a lot more about the sport, but his body's failing him a bit. He's still in a moon boot at the moment, so a lot faster than his old man. Seriously faster than his old man. But his aptitude for footy, he's got to learn a bit more about it, but he's got some raw talents. So, you know what? He'll make it if he really, really applies himself.
Would you encourage him to do the chicken walk at some stage during his career?
He will. If he actually gets to hear this, he'll be phoning me within minutes.
Yes.
What are you talking like that about me for? You're an idiot. Every father's I almost swore then. Every father's a dunce in their son's eyes. So, he encourage him to find his own path, but he's got some serious talent.
We've loved having you on for the last hour or so. We've been talking to our producer in the commercial breaks, John O'Nash, sitting in the control room, suggesting that we should do this over 4 parts, maybe 4 hours of chat, and even then, I still don't think we'd get through everything that we needed to talk about. Did we get to
anything new? I can tell you one thing new. We mentioned Hawthorn. There's a little bit of a snippet for you. You know, out at Waverley, there's the big mosaic. When I worked at VFL House, I got sent by Alan Schwab to go to the man who made that mosaic, and they had a picture of Kelvin Templeton going for a mark. And that was a photograph, a flat 2D image in front of him. He needed a real-life footballer to stand there with his hands up above his head, with his shirt off, so we could get the definition of what a footballer's physique looked like. I modelled for that for about 6 hours. That's actually me up. It's Kelvin Templeton's body movement. It's my body shape.
I find it very hard to believe that someone would be able to convince you to get your kid off term.
Well, it was part of my job. I was getting paid to go and do it. So I drive out there sometimes, and back in the old days, and we'd walk in and I'd look up there, and if it was with someone, I said, "That's me," and they go, "Ha, yeah, as if." I go, "Yeah, what it actually is."
Well, there you go. It took until the end of the show, but we got that snippet, and it wasn't even a question that I asked. It was a question that you posed yourself.
I was trying to think of something.
We found out about Gary Ablett and the duck hunting.
Yeah, duck shooting. Went duck shooting, first game, yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Pleasure, mate.
We go back a long way. We've had some fun over the years, but one thing that is indisputable is that you were one of the champions of the game.
Very kind of you.
And it was a great thrill to be able to sit there and watch you for so many years. And who knows, we might even catch up in a commentary box the way things are going with everybody intermingling these days. Hopefully I'll see you throughout the year.
Cheers, mate. Great to see you.
Dermott Brereton joining us on This Is Your Sporting Life for Tobin Brothers Funeral, celebrating lives. Hope you enjoyed it. We'll be back same time next week right here on 11:16 SEN, Melbourne's home of sport.